Today is November 21st, and this is my final daily update video that I will be recording from this place because it is our last day here before I head back to the East Coast for the Thanksgiving holiday. But there are a couple of things that I have learned kind of living in this transitional period. So the first is that back in June, when I moved back home, I didn't have a set plan for where I was going to land in LA. And I am very much like a planner type person. So, back in 2010, when I got my first New York apartment ever, I don't even think I had seen it. And I was very price sensitive at the time. So it was more important to me that I find a place that I thought the price made sense rather than like me actually liking the space. And it turned out from that first apartment experience, we were living in a 1-bedroom that had been converted into 3. And I was only there for a year. And then after a year, I ended up moving into a studio, then thinking I would want to do a roommate again. And then since then, I've kind of been living on my own since this cohabitation period with Greg. So anyway, fast forward to June. I was kind of back home on the East Coast, getting ready to come back out to LA. I was going to pack light, maybe just bring a luggage. And I remember just feeling so stressed about it. And I would confront Greg about, what the plan was. Should I find something on my own? And then when I ended up here in July, I ended up staying with Greg for the first month. And even though it didn't feel ideal, there were a lot of things that were great about it, including having a place to land right when I arrived in LA and not having to sign a lease or lock in anything. And also it was super close to the co-working space that I was working out of. So after about a month there, it turned out that Greg was going to be traveling for about a month. So I ended up finding 2 different friends to stay with during that period of time. One was in Culver City and the other was in Highland Park. And even though those were short stints, they kind of gave me a good chance to try out different parts of the city. And all during that time, I was kind of touring different apartments. Greg wanted to be within a 20-minute drive of his music studio. So we were trying to find some spots there. And then we ended up finding a spot where we would be a block from the beach in Venice. And in Greg's over 10 years of living in LA, he had always dreamed of living by the beach. And it was also during when that LA heat wave was happening. So I did enjoy it, but the place didn't have AC. And it also made me realize there were a couple things that I guess I was looking for. Mainly the AC in terms of comfort and having a place to live. So we were there for about a month, and then the time came where that was coming to an end. And I had a friend in Pasadena who was willing to let us stay for a couple of days as we look for our next spot. But then it just so turned out that she ended up testing positive for COVID. So I ended up just booking a last minute Airbnb. And then we've been in this current place for the last 2 months and don't really have a plan for what's going to happen after this. We're both heading over to the East Coast for a period of time and then just going to figure it out when we get back here. But here's what I learned in that long story is that there's always going to be a backup plan. So if you can't get the place at the price that you want or, need some place to land, you can always put an ask out to friends if you need a place to crash. There are a couple Facebook groups or Craigslist that offer short-term sublet options if you're looking for shorter term. And then if you're willing to pay a little bit more, you can check out Airbnb. And then if you're willing to pay a little bit more, you can check out a hotel. So we do have a budget, but in those kind of crunch time periods where I felt like things just felt really stressful, I guess what I learned through that entire experience is that I have options. So the good news is I don't feel as stressed about going into this next phase of like not quite knowing where I'm going to be landing when I get back, if. Um, and with the holidays, it's interesting because there are just like so many trips across the country. So I'm going to be coming back to LA in a couple of weeks because I ended up getting a doctor's appointment that I've been trying to get for like 6 months. But when I come back, I also know that it's going to be a short trip because I'm going to head back home for the holidays. And Thanksgiving and like around Christmas, even though my family isn't religious, are two holidays I try not to miss. I will say that I have not been back home for Thanksgiving since 2019. So so I also just forgot, like, so I'm like flying out tomorrow morning and I have a layover. I also just forgot like what a headache holiday travel is. And I also haven't been back home for Christmas, the Christmas holiday, in 2 years as well, since 2019. 2020, or is it 3 years? Wow. So, um, so yeah, all of that to say, I am trusting that I will have a place to live. And if you want the play-by-play, I have an entire playlist on TikTok talking about the move. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about like something I learned was like I had like anticipatory stress about the uncertainty of not knowing where I was going to live. And then now I'm coming on 5 months being in LA, and I've lived in like 6 different places, and we kind of just go with it. And so Greg and I have just put a bunch of stuff into storage. We've also like packed relatively light, so that part is good. And I think when I come back, I'm going to maybe be a little bit more aggressive in terms of just offloading and keeping, not like overpacking in case this is how it's going to be. But I also heard from a friend that, maybe 6 months from now is the best time to potentially buy. And I had thought about potentially putting some more permanent roots here, which is also why we haven't really committed to like a longer term lease, because we just don't know like what the market is going to look like and stuff like that. But it definitely looks a lot different from back in 2019. I was like making a lot of trips here to like look at different places and stuff. So yeah, so just keeping an eye out, and wanted to just film one more of these daily updates before I head back to the East Coast. And just in terms of like life and stuff, there's just been like a lot of stuff going on. And I'm just trying to navigate it as pragmatically as I can, and I will share more information as it becomes available.